The human right to health is the idea that everyone is entitled to a standard of living which is adequate for their physical and mental health and well-being. This encompasses access to sanitation, adequate food, decent housing, healthy working conditions, a clean environment, and access to all medical services. The Constitution of the WHO says that the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being. But all too often these rights come into conflict with another set of rights, the right of corporations to protect their intellectual property. When a pharmaceutical company develops a new drug, they are granted a patent which allows them to enjoy exclusive right of sale over that drug for a certain length of time, in the US 20 years. The idea is to maximize the profits brought in by the developers of brand new drugs, so that companies will be incentivized to pump money into research and development, bringing more and more medicines onto the market. The downside, of course, is that the lack of competition keeps drug prices high. And if you are priced out of a drug that you need to survive, you may be out of luck. In 2015, American AIDS patients on a drug called Daraprim learned this the hard way, when Martin Shkreli, CEO of the company that produced it, hiked the price from $13.50 to $750 per pill. Now, most people would see this behaviour as unethical, but the attitude taken by many executives is that a CEO's only responsibility is to maximise the profits taken in by the shareholders who own the company.
I have two questions for you. The first is, if you could rewind the clock a few months, I wonder if you would do anything differently. And the second is, I'd like to know if you think corporate reputation matters.
I probably would have raised the price higher. Is probably what I would have done.
Why?
I think healthcare prices are inelastic. I could have raised it higher and made more profits for our shareholders, which is my primary duty. And again, no one wants to say it. No one's proud of it. But this is a capitalist society, capitalist system, and capitalist rules. And my investors expect me to maximize profits, not to minimize them or go half or go 70%, but to go to 100% of the profit curve that we're all taught in MBA class.
The biggest victims of the current drug pricing system are patients in the developing world, many of whom stand no chance of affording the steeply priced patented drugs. This was not always a problem until relatively recently most developing countries did not honour the patent system. Because almost all pharmaceutical research and development takes place in developed countries, countries with fewer resources figured that they had more to gain from improving access than they had to lose. That all started to change in 1995 when the World Trade Organization enforced the Trade-Related Intellectual Property Agreements, or TRIPS, which established international standards of patent protection for the pharmaceuticals. Suddenly, developing countries were forced to adhere to standards of patent law created by and for the developed world. Realizing that there was a problem, in 2001 the WHO's Ministerial Conference released the Doha Declaration on TRIPS and public health. This declaration affirmed that the TRIPS agreements can and should be interpreted and implemented to protect public health, and in particular to promote medicine access for all. It gave developing countries some flexibility to disregard patent rights in favour of promoting affordable essential drugs. However, a 2005 follow-up report by the WHO revealed that many developing countries have not taken advantage of this flexibility. This is thought to be the result of a shortage of highly trained legal professionals in these countries. Lacking the expertise needed to draft their own unique patent legislation, they tend to copy the existing policies of developed countries in order to comply with TRIPS. These days, developing countries are experimenting with several strategies to fight back against access inequality. One strategy which has seen some success is the idea of the compulsory license. A compulsory license is when a government mandates that a pharmaceutical company license out production rights for a drug to a generic manufacturer, at a price set by the government which is often a fraction of the market value. In 2007, Brazil obtained its first ever compulsory license, demanding that Merck license the anti-HIV drug efavirenz. 7 years later, India followed suit, granting a compulsory license for cancer drug sorafenib to the generics manufacturer Natco. Bayer was forced to sell sorafenib to Natco for 1/30th of the previous sale price. These efforts have proven that generic production and compulsory licensing are effective in improving access to life-saving drugs in the developing world. And it's estimated that Brazil saved over $1 billion by providing its citizens with cheap antiretroviral treatment. In 2004, the World Health Organization created a Commission on Intellectual Property Rights, Innovation and Public Health. 22 studies were carried out, and it was concluded that IP laws in developing countries do not have a substantial effect on pharmaceutical innovation. So, compulsory licensing seems to work, as a partial solution to an enormous problem. But it addresses only one of the flaws inherent in the patent-based market economy for new medicines. One idea which illustrates the staggering disparity in healthcare access between the global rich and the global poor is the 1090 gap. That is, less than 10% of the world's research and development funds address the major health problems which affect 90% of the population. Developed countries pour billions annually into the cure for male pattern baldness, while in the developing world, 10 million children die preventable deaths every year. It is clear that this is the result of economic incentives which favour the problems of those with money. But is there anything we can do about it? In 2008, the WHO's 61st World Health Assembly prepared a global strategy for intellectual property rights designed to expand access to medicines. One of the proposals was the establishment of an international public fund which would require different contributions from different member states depending on their level of economic development, and which would contribute to research and development of treatments for previously neglected conditions. The Nobel laureate economist Joseph Stiglitz has proposed a simple alternative to the patent system. Instead of rewarding new discoveries with an exclusive right of sale, reward them with a cash prize provided by the government. This would lead to many of the same incentives towards research for corporations, while avoiding many of the pitfalls. Whether or not this ambitious strategy would work remains to be seen. For now, we're stuck with the patent system, for better or for worse.